All right. Well, we are live with Sarah Braim, and Sarah is the previous owner of House of Blond. So she's coming on today to share some of her experiences as an owner and going full circle to selling her business in the end, and just sharing a lot about the journey and also the work that we did together. So Sarah, just give her a little intro to everyone first.
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Kaylee, for actually having me on here. I mean, it's actually just really, it's a bit nerve-wracking to come on here and share your own, kind of your inside scoop on running a business, but it's so beneficial to so many people. And I got so much out of doing coaching with you. And I mean, I've known you for a long time. So that really was I think made it a lot easier for me to, I guess, kind of come on here and like open up about some of that stuff. So thanks for taking the time to do this. Yeah, so I guess actually I started the House of Blond, which was my shop. It wasn't a planned business. I didn't, I mean, I actually went to business school, and so I always wanted to open a hair salon, but this business didn't come up because I wrote a plan and found a space, and it just kind of organically happened, which was really the best way. So I ended up in a space with some girls who were already stylists, and the girl who was operating the space decided she didn't want it anymore. And so the only way that we were going to be able to continue to work there is that if I took it over. So it just kind of, yeah, I actually didn't really want to make it
organically.
Yeah. And I didn't really want to make a big deal of it because the girls who were there, they had been there for a long time. And I just really enjoyed working there. It was a really great creative space. It was, we were kind of not on the beaten path because we weren't storefront. So it was, I guess, maybe less scary to do things, because it was just over time. I think that, my clients were like, you need a salon name, and, you should decorate and you should do all these things. And so I was like, okay, and so a lot of people in my life, helped me to kind of come up with those things. So it just really was a naturally, or it was an organic salon, which was really kind of the best part about it.
Better. Well, and it's great because you did equip yourself. I mean, you went to school, which most salon owners don't, myself included. I skipped most of school. I didn't go to business school. But sometimes when you're preparing yourself, then the opportunities present themselves along the way. So that sounds like, that's what happened for you. So that's really exciting. So tell all of our listeners kind of where you were at in your business before we started working together. What were some of the challenges you were having, just for them to, I think a lot of, you've done this complete loop. So you've been a stylist, you've been an owner, you've sold. So a lot of owners out there, that might be facing some of the challenges that you faced before, can really resonate with what you can share with them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I'd actually been in business for like a number of years before you and I, or before I signed on for coaching with you, officially for coaching with you. And I think I feel like I almost plateaued. I just got to this place where I kind of lost sight of my goals, my vision, and I started focusing on, I'm a people pleaser. So I got really into focusing on what my renters wanted from me, because I did end up operating as a chair rental. I started as chair rental, I went to employment, and I went back to chair rental. So I kind of went through and I flip-flopped like that, not because I wanted to do that, but because people wanted me to do that. So I think I never really had a clear picture of, I was operating a lot as a employed salon as opposed to a rental salon. I was not following the rules of a rental salon because I was following what people asked me to do. And
Mm.
so I think I just got really jumbled in that. And I mean, I knew that we were doing really well in terms of like money success. I was super busy. In fact, I was too busy, which is always the best problem. So I knew from that capacity that we were doing really well. And I had, I had full-time renters, and then I had less renters. And so that kind of flip-flopped depending on, who was in the salon. But I think I was unhappy because I lost sight of my goal, and I just felt like I had no control of what I was doing, and I didn't know how to kind of start again. I didn't know how to kind of, I guess, like clean slate, or I felt lost.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Would you say, I think a lot of salon owners almost feel, I don't know if this is too strong of a word, but almost like bullied by their team when they don't have a clear stance of like, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is the direction we're going in. You can get kind of pushed around. Would you say that's kind of the feeling that you had?
Totally. Totally. And I mean, I get it from both perspectives because, as the owner, it's my responsibility, like that is something that I always tried to have an internal conversation about, like when, I felt like I was having that battle with people, I tried to come back and look at what I was doing, because it's my leadership and it's my responsibility to set the tone. And it was hard for me. Confrontation is not my strong point, which I felt like a lot of what it came down to. And so, that kind of touches on one of the things that I did to change, which was it's a huge learning process, and still is a learning process. But yeah, there was a lot of those kind of things that came up that I didn't know how to manage.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide, like, I want to invest in myself and my business? Because I know a lot of salon owners, they're in the situation where they know they want to change too, right? Like you kind of got to the point where you're like, well, this is not really the business I set out to create. It's not really working for my lifestyle. So at what point what made you take the plunge to actually like invest in yourself, put time aside to work on your business, less time in it, and kind of getting that foundation set up?
Well, I think the beginning, I mean, just those feelings of, like not wanting to go to work, not wanting to go into your own space, like that was definitely the start of, I needed to make a change.
That's a good warning signal, isn't it?
Yeah, big
Like,
time.
oh, don't
Yeah.
want to quit.
Yeah, I want to quit my own salon.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the beginning part. But honestly, it was a conversation that I had with you that really, I kind of left that conversation and I went hiking for like the whole afternoon with my dog and really just thought about what you and I talked about, which really was the value of me and of my skills and how much I've accomplished in my career. And so, you really helped kind of steer me away from thinking about all the things that I was punishing myself for, that I was doing wrong, and turn it around to, okay, how about we focus on all the things that you're doing right? And let's change the things that you're doing wrong into something that you're doing right and that you're learning from those. So that was it was a mind shift for me that I really had to get on board with, was to be, to feel like I was valuable enough and that what I was doing was valuable to other people, like, other stylists and other clients. So it was a mind shift, and that came from conversation. Yeah, that was huge for me.
That's a huge shift, right? It's
Yeah.
like, because we can just easily beat ourselves up and look at all the things that we're not doing. But as a salon owner, I mean, all salon owners need to remember that you're providing jobs for people, and you're taking risk on your shoulders, and you're the leader that everyone's looking up to. And I think a lot of salon owners kind of forget that, because they do get muddled in, getting pushed around by what everybody wants, and they forget what they have to offer, because it's not everyone who's ready to take all those risks and who's ready to lead the way. So So that's awesome. So you decided to plunge in, invest in yourself. So what were the, maybe you can just share with the audience, like what were the products that you chose with us and how, and then we'll talk after about how those changed. And Christine's jumped on here. Hi, Christine. I need to see how I don't know how to work all of this yet. Yes. Think about the positive. Yeah. Christine agrees with you. So
yeah.
on.
And, I mean, one of the things too, is that, having somebody to like, okay, so I'll tell you, yeah. So the products that I did with you, oh my gosh, well, I did everything with you. So I think I started with the Salon Profit Project. That was kind of the beginning part. I did one-on-one coaching. We did a lot of financial review. There was the accountability group, that's a Facebook group, and then the Salon Owner Circle on Facebook as well, which, I mean, all of those things I could talk about independently because they were all beneficial in different ways. So like the one-on-one coaching for me, I find for my personality type is that I work really well with people that I can bounce ideas off of. So, even it goes back to when you're in the back room and you want to like formulate for a client. I love that, being able to share those ideas with people. So I think the one-on-one coaching was really beneficial for me to be able to have another perspective on things. So
Awesome.
that worked. Yeah. So that was wonderful.
Can you tell our audience, because it's nice for them to hear like really tangible changes that you made. So, and I know you had a few actions. So let's start with like, what's the one small action that made the biggest change for you?
I think getting really clear on my goals and my vision was probably like, that was the initial thing that got a lot of changes rolling for me, was just getting really clear on where I wanted things to go. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it built my confidence a lot because I was more clear on why I was going into the salon and what I was offering to my clients, and also what I had built for other stylists and what they had, what they had offered to them for a place to be able to work. So that was
what you said, that's your first, because that's the way we set up Salon Owner Circle, right? With purpose is that first pillar, that you have to know, be clear on where you're going, what your vision is, and be like really steadfast on your values, and kind of like you're unshakable. Like, what's your deal breaker? What's the thing that you're like not going to allow? What are the things that you want to work towards? So I love that you put that as your first one, because I totally agree with you. That's like where it all starts, is like, where's that clear vision, purpose and values?
Well, the worksheets that we did in Salon Profit Project, yeah, they did start there, but I also remember like everything that we did after that, you can kind of reflect back onto those original goals and like your kind of foundation of why you're doing things. So it's really easy to start getting, like, I see how I got sidetracked over the years, but if you just kind of keep going back to those initial goals, it's a practice though too. It's like learning to, if you don't brush your teeth at night, you only brush them in the morning. To make yourself brush your teeth at night every day, you have to put an alarm on your phone, and like all those things in the program, like every week, every month. I still actually have them on my phone, like Monday morning to go through my finances. Like I still do that stuff now, so it's become like a life habit, and I just use it in other ways now that I don't own a salon anymore.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like anything you want to change, right? Like the first thing you have to do is assess, like, where am I now? And then what are the changes I want to make? And then it takes some energy output to like make the changes. But then once you settle into that new routine, then it's just kind of how you live, right? You don't really think twice about it. So.
Yeah. Well, it also too, for me, once I made that change, once I got really clear about like, okay, I want a rental business, like that's the direction that I definitely wanted to go. And I started eliminating things that were part of an employed vision. that's when actually a lot of other questions started coming up in terms of how I was doing this and how I'm charging for this. And so it just kind of, it does naturally, I guess, like evolve into other aspects of your business, which came up in the program anyway. So I see how you actually design the program, because they're the things that you go to next, which made a lot of sense.
It's like the domino, right? It's like you change
Yes.
one thing and then the other things kind of naturally start to shift on their own.
Yeah.
So talk about that a bit more, because I know I teach the class, like the salon model is broken, where we go over each different model and the pros and cons. And I think all the models are great. They all, have a different benefit for the owner, a different benefit for the team. What happens in our industry that I don't think is good is when they get all mixed together, and they start like mixing models. And what happens is the team gets every good thing from every model and the owner gets every bad thing from every model. So when you don't really like choose a model, then that's kind of the dynamic that happens. So maybe you can talk about some of the things that happened when you really became a rental salon, how that change impacted your life.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say one of the big things is the responsibility of the difference between an employed stylist and a rental stylist. So your finances, in terms of when you're operating as a chair renter, you are 100% a sole proprietor. So your business expenses are all of your expenses. So your cleaning supplies, your product usage, your insurance, all of those things become yours. They are no longer the salon's. And so that, I think, was a big shift. And I felt that shift when I made a lot of those changes with people who I was treating as stylists to then they went to renters. That was big.
So what changed for you in that?
Well, I think because I'm basically telling these girls, guys and girls now, that they are now accountable for everything for themselves. And I'm no longer taking on, like, I'm not staying late to clean up after them. I'm not supplying them with back bar products. I'm not supplying them with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was a hard shift for me to be able to actually do, but it was a huge relief for me because I was taking on a lot of financial burden and I was not benefiting from it because I wasn't seeing the paycheck back from the usage of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you were taking on, doing all the ordering, making sure it was stocked. You actually had all your money tied up in inventory for the independent stylist. And the other thing is it grays out the lines between them being independent and not, it's for
Huge.
tax purposes. It can really open up a lot of liabilities for you when the lines are very blurred.
Yes.
So that's so that was a great shift because that took off a lot of responsibility for you, freed up some cash flow for you, and just gets people in the mindset that they are independent, right? Because that's that's the reason they are doing the chair rental model, is they want to be independent. So really putting that responsibility back into their hands.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's not a blame factor to say like, oh, like chair renters don't take responsibility. It's a learned behavior. I mean, like we have chair rental salons who supply chair renters with things that are not part of a chair rental model. We are teaching them that this is how it's done. And so I think like that needs to change from the beginning, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of comparison in our industry. They're like, well, this salon, like they provide like cleaning for me, or they do, whatever it is for me. And I do always try to remind people that you can't compare one business to another, because everything about that business is different than this. So it's suitability. If you want to have your back bar included, then that's the salon that you need to go to. If you want to operate fully as a chair renter and be able to have control over, you know, all your decisions about where your finances are, then this is, you know, or whatever it is. So it's really, anyway, it really comes back to though, like how we are teaching people in the industry about what is the standard, you know?
Well, exactly. And I think that's where there's a huge lack of leadership, and there's so many people getting kind of exactly like probably resonating with you when you said, I was just doing what everybody wanted. And so that's how we've kind of gotten here. And so I love that you're leading the way, you know, to help get us out of here, because I think everyone realizes that things need to change. And yeah, and just running, you know, really running the business as a business and knowing your numbers. So I love that you said you can't compare either. So one thing about you is like you did run a very successful, profitable business, and you knew your numbers. And so that's another place, you know, where when people are comparing, like, hey, my shop does this, my shop does that. It depends again on what some people have really good old leases, and they can, you know, they have some extra cash freed up that they can do some different perks. And some people are in, you know, main areas where they have really high rent and they're a little bit more stretched. So you, as an owner, you really need to know your numbers so that you can know again what you can and cannot promise to your team. So you were really good at that part, right? Keeping
that was something that I felt like I had a good grasp on for most of the part, which makes me feel really good about. I made a lot of other mistakes, but
for me that's key, because a salon that's losing money at some point, it's just not sustainable. But they can't provide anything for their team. And so that's one of my missions, is to bridge the gap between the owner and the team, because it's not them against you, like I picture like a tug of war, right? That's what happens in commission salons. It's like this tug of war. They're like, I want more. No, I want more. And when we can work on the same team with clarity of like why we're here, what we're trying to achieve. You know, you had such a beautiful space, like really boutique salon. And I think the people who got to be there were really fortunate, because it was organized and it was a really nicely.
Oh, thanks, Kaylee. Yeah, it was a wonderful space. I mean, I think something that I did get a lot out of from the finances was finances are an ongoing thing. I mean, it's not something that you know, we didn't go through our financial sheets, like the profit and loss statements or goal setting. You don't just like do it once and then you're good. It's a continuous thing that you do all the time. And it's a little bit like, for me, I really enjoy looking at that aspect of things. But my focus, I like to be very focused on that part of it, because I like to understand it, I guess, because I didn't go to school I'm a hairstylist. So I guess for me, it's not a natural thing to be good at that. So it was something that I always really wanted to be good at in my business, was knowing like the back end of things. But part of the program in Salon Profit Project was, I really liked how you, I don't know how to explain this correctly, but how you kind of started from like what you were earning at the end of the year, to how many hours a week you worked, to how many days a week you worked, to working it out to basically what you were charging hourly. And it really opened up how I looked at how I was charging, my clients. Like, so a different part of the business, not just as a chair rental. And so that kind of got me really excited about really digging more into my finances, about where I was spending money. And then I got into like salon scale, which, I mean, that changed everything for me again. So all of like, there's just so many components in the program that really make you look at what you're charging, and you know, what your operating costs are that you probably maybe didn't see in a big picture, like providing coffee, providing magazines, like all of these things that, you know, only cost you like $20 a month. But then in the grand scheme of things, you know, it sounds so simple, but when you actually see it broken down to what you're charging, it's mind blowing where money goes.
It just adds up. It's like, what? How is
Oh my
that?
God. Yeah.
And then, but the cool thing about it is it shifts equally as easily, right? If you start
Yes.
eliminating some of those little things, all of a sudden it shifts back into balance. And I think what you're talking about is like the ripple effect, right? It's like,
Yes.
like when you drop a stone in the pond and it ripples the water. And that's what happens like when you start to make positive change in your business or your life. It always ripples into other areas. So you're learning about your business finance, and then you're like, oh, hey, why don't I apply this to my personal life too? And that's where you get, you know, that compounding effect, and you get that change starts to happen with less effort in other areas of your life.
And that's what you and I actually, when we started working together, is that we went from obviously like profiling me as a business to then we actually shifted those financial documents. We had two of them. If you remember, it was business and then personal, because I was still kind of a chair renter in my own business because I was working as a stylist, but then the chair rental was separate. So I ended up actually separating those two out, which then again, it just made everything more clear. And, you know, it just, I don't know. I mean, it's super exciting to actually have a really good understanding of that stuff, because to be fair, most of us probably don't.
Did you fall in love with your numbers?
Yeah. And the other part of it too was, so there was, I can't remember who it was that was in our accountability group, but I was looking for an accountant, because that part for me was actually a bit of that was difficult for me, like the accounting aspect. As soon as the salon got really busy, I just was like, oh, I need help. And so having an accountant, I hired Michelle. I love her. She changed everything for me because she knew how to speak my language. And so she just made everything so easy for me when I was inputting numbers for the business. And that was a game changer for me as well, was learning how to ask for help. And then asking for help in terms of like on the finances side, made a big difference. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, and I think it's just like getting out of your own, you know, like I think a lot of salon owners out there are creating a lot of work for themselves, that there is like an easier way of doing things. And so if you're talking to someone who has an expertise in that, they can like refine the way you're doing it and just make life a heck of a lot easier.
Well, I think a lot of the feelings that I had sometimes were, I wasn't afraid to pass off responsibility to someone else because they weren't capable of it. It was finding the time to figure out where would be the best place to find people to help. Yeah. That was a lot of it. So, and I'm sure a lot of other people resonate with that. Like, you know, they wish they had a salon manager, but then they're like, oh, but then I have to train them. And, you know, then I have to make a training manual and all these things that get pushed back.
Yeah.
And so
it's really daunting when you don't know. And I remember as an owner, I knew I needed help, but I didn't know how to explain what I needed help with, even what I needed was operations and policy, like KPIs and all these things, but I didn't know what that was. So I didn't even know who to hire. Like I didn't know who out there could solve my problem. Exactly. So that could be a place people get stuck too, right? Is when they're like, oh, I know I have this problem, but I don't even know like who's the expert in solving this or exactly what it is.
Yeah. So learning how to speak a language, like that was something that I learned from talking to other salon owners in the accountability groups and the salon owner circle, was just actually talking to other owners and how they were handling things and what their experience was. So I got a lot out of that, and a lot of making a lot of connections about how to handle situations, and just, the right language. That was really beneficial for me.
Oh, that's awesome. You can't go wrong with a group. Sometimes people feel impatient to attend group calls because, sometimes it can be a little off topic, or it's maybe not exactly what they're there for. But I think if you can get kind of grounded enough and sit through, have at least one group that you're a part of where you're collaborating, you always get like one takeaway that can, again, like cause all these ripple effects in your business. So I think it's really huge to be able to jump on. I'm part of one myself for creating memberships. And sometimes I can feel like, oh, it's not really the topic I want to talk about. But by the end of the call, there's always like some kind of action I can take away with that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't hopped on. So I love that you're talking about that too. Just the power of the group.
Yeah, it's, you do have to kind of go in with the mindset about what you're going in for and be open. It is, and it's also a trusting place. So being open with other salon owners, or, whatever that circle is really important, because you want to be able to advise people or to be able to ask honest questions. And, there's always going to be somebody who, makes a silly comment or judges you or whatever. And, those people are just not there for the right reasons, and there's nothing you can do about it. But there is, majority of those people are there to contribute and to learn or to help. And I think that we all benefit from that, from those groups.
Totally. So what's one big action you took?
Well, I've got a few. Well, I think one of the big ones was deciding to sell my business.
Yeah, that was huge.
That was a big one. Yeah, I mean, I guess you probably want to know why I chose to go that way.
I'm sure I already know why, but I'm sure everyone would love to know why.
Well, I've now been in the industry for 22 years, which is totally crazy when I think about it. So it's quite a while. And I'm super lucky. I've worked in so many different, I've worked in so many different capacities. So I've worked in film, I've worked in TV, I worked in management, I worked as a platform artist, I worked as an educator. And I also just came from a salon where I was really fortunate. The salon that I worked at, I had a really amazing mentor who's still a mentor to me. And I think I got to a place where I want to contribute in another way. So by no means am I finished in the industry. But I do think that I felt like I needed to make a change for my own growth and just to, develop my career in a different way from running a salon. And so that is yet to be.
And you do like to skip town and go to Mexico for the winter too.
Yes.
And I think that we have in common.
Yes. I think a lifestyle also choice of operating a business. My life choices about where I spend all my free time is outdoors, and a lot of it is traveling. So, I think working in a different capacity will be the next challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you have in mind?
Well, how much do I want to divulge into that?
just a big picture kind of direction.
I definitely, I've enjoyed the process of working with you in terms of not just being coached, but how I felt with having somebody like you to be able to talk to and like help me through the ups and the downs of my business. I really want to be able to contribute that to other people. I enjoy making people feel good, which has always been behind the chair. But I also think too about like helping for other stylists to become successful. So there is an education / coaching somewhere in my future. So
exciting.
Yeah. So which you and I hopefully will stay in touch with about.
course.
Yeah.
That's great. And so because I know there's probably a lot of salon owners out there also who resonate, like have had thoughts of selling and, kind of wonder what that cycle looks like. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, how did you finally get clear on that decision and how has that changed your life?
Well, that's a hard one. It wasn't an overnight process. This was, I had wavered on this idea for quite a while. And I think I think probably the final decision for me about selling was about, I could be successful I could help other people and be successful in another capacity. So how else can I work with stylists? How else can I help people to grow and become successful without actually physically being in a salon?
So it's really about your next step, your own personal growth, your own personal journey.
Yes.
And like challenging yourself, like to do something different.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think I was one of those salon owners that, we lived through COVID, which was hard on all salons. And, I never felt when we were actually closed, I never had this feeling of like, oh my God, I want out of my business. Like it wasn't actually a driving factor. It was more when we came back to work that I felt like I just wasn't able to contribute the way that I wanted to. And so I think it was personal goals for me. And so selling for me was actually, it's difficult because of course, you have some attachment because it's your own personal, I built the furniture, I just did everything in that shop. So it becomes your baby. Mm-hmm. And so there was a part for me that was hard because seeing what would happen to it, I got really attached to, as you would. And I think also to how that looks to the outside world. We are so focused on our pride and, all of those things. I was terrified that people would think that I'm like giving up or, that we weren't successful or, something like that. And it really had nothing to do with that. I
can vouch for you on that.
Yeah, I know. I think actually you were like, if I was still in business, I'd buy your salon.
Yeah, it was just so well run. And, that's what I do. I see salon financials and sometimes, often I get like a punch in the gut. I'm so emotionally tied to what I do that I just feel sick for the owner because it's just like the numbers don't lie and the numbers sometimes just don't work. Yeah. And I remember when I saw your business, I was like, oh, finally, when I get the odd one that's working or at least has the potential to work, I'm just like so thrilled. And so, yeah, I remember seeing yours being like, wow, you're doing a great job and you've got a great little business. So, and that's encouraging for everyone too, right? Because it doesn't mean, actually, that's when you should sell, right? That's, you want to sell when your business is thriving and doing well, because then you have something that someone would want to buy. Yeah. Where there's a lot of people selling just because they want to get out. And, when you're in that position, you don't have as much leverage for asking for a sale. And you can feel a lot more desperate. So Christine said she loves, we're talking next steps. Again, I think this topic really resonates. So yeah, share anything else you want to share about it, about your journey, kind of where you're at now. And
I think that I think just going back to what you were saying about like why people sell, or, there's so many reasons. And I think we all kind of like, since I've sold, I've actually had a number of people approach me about asking me about the steps that I did. So that is something that I think would be interesting to kind of go into talking to other salon owners who are going through that, because it's a personal process. There isn't a right or a wrong or how you value your business. We're kind of a funny industry in that way, that because what our actual assets are in the business and how valued they are to an outsider to what we value them is so different. So you know, I would say that it's a difficult thing to do. Salon sales are they're hard. They're not easy. And to make that choice to sell or to walk away, I mean, you're amazing to have the courage to do it, because we are so judged, and we work in that industry. It's just how we are. So yeah, not easy. But I'll tell you what, when I made that choice, and when I actually like put together, I made a slideshow of the salon sale, and the steps that I took towards actually selling, I knew I made the right choice right away. And it wasn't because I had a sale instantly, but it was just how I felt about what I was doing. It was the right thing to do.
Awesome.
Which was so liberating.
You're like, whew, okay, here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that a huge part of ownership is, when you're finished work at the end of the day or the end of the week or the month or the year or whatever, is you feel everybody has a different picture of what their success is. And you're not going to feel like you're successful every day or every minute. But I think the difference of how many times you do feel successful to not needs to outweigh that. And whether that's, you're having $1 million in your bank account, or you have 25 stylists, or, you do L'Oreal color trophies, or whatever that looks like to you, is amazing. I mean, we all are successful in our own ways. And I think that's really important for people to remember when it comes to, that's why these programs are so amazing, because they really stop to make you think about, like, what are you doing? And it goes by so fast.
It goes by so fast. And it's just to get those little wins too, right? So you can feel proud of them. One thing you said that really stood out to me was just the kind of the ego piece around selling, of that, what are people going to think? And I went through the same thing when I sold, because I wanted to be a business coach. And at one point my buyers fell through, and it didn't leave me very much time to sell. And I thought, maybe it's not going to sell in time. And my one thing, I had a business coach. I work with coaches too. I believe in working with coaches for everyone. So I'm not only a coach to others, but I also have a business coach. And my business coach says, write down the one thing that you're clear about, the one thing that you know for sure, which is always a great place to start, right? If you're a little bit confused, just write down that one thing you are clear. And I wrote down, I will not re-sign another lease. So I knew, it's time for me to move on. Same as you, I had other visions, and we travel a lot. And so I was really clear on that. And when the sale kind of fell through at the last minute, I thought, I'm going to just have to close my doors, because I'm not going to re-sign the lease. And I only have like 2 weeks left. And that's a story for another day. It was kind of a miracle that we sold in that 2 weeks. And we sold after I got like humbled enough to say, you know what, I'll still be a business coach, even if I close the door, because I know I'm making the right decision for my business. Even though it might appear like I failed and closed my doors, I know that's not the case. So how did you get over that step of like, oh, what might people think of the reason why I sold?
Well, I resonate with that hugely. I mean, I think for me, knowing that my day-to-day life and my long-term goals were not being fulfilled, that was enough for me to know that I was making the right choice. And I mean, there was some other stuff that kind of ties into that as well, which we can talk about on another call. But, in terms of, just like your lease coming up, or, especially after COVID, because a lot of financial things changed. So things got more expensive, like it felt to me like at that time that it was the right move. So I don't know how much I actually believed in the beginning. I think you believed that I was going to sell my salon more than I believed that I was going to sell my salon.
I think that's true, but you did all the steps and you did them well. And so, that's the thing about having a process to follow, is
Yes.
sometimes you don't even have to fully believe, like if there is someone behind you that believes it, but you're doing like taking action on the steps. And that's for me, like, you can have a good coach, but it's also having a good client. Like, some people you can give them actions, ideas, and if they're not following through, nothing really changes. And so you really ran with all the ideas. Even if you weren't sure they were going to work, you're like, I'm going to go full out and give it my best shot. And you really did a good job on like every little step we talked about, and then trusted the process, and it worked, right?
Yeah, it is though. I mean, there was definitely, I would say more moments of, I don't want to say doubt that I wasn't going to sell, but I did have to be like, go through the motions, do it. It's not important about what the outcome is. This is the practice in itself of what I was doing was the part that I was trying to be really proud of myself for, that I was going through and following the steps to try to sell so that I can work on the next chapter of my life.
So exciting. So you mentioned there was a few big things. So one of them was deciding to sell. What were some of the other ones?
I think the other thing too was actually just staying true to, what we did in my finances, and really eliminating stuff that were not necessary. So actually like following just like the whole program after I had done the program. So it was staying true to that and really making sure I took the time to, check in on Mondays to go through my finances, and just creating that new schedule was big for me. And I mean, I think a lot of that honestly was about how much I valued myself. I think I found it very hard to do that before because I didn't have a lot of value in myself. So you really helped me to remember how important I am and how much I was contributing. And that's, I mean, I don't know about other owners, but like, especially like being one owner, I mean, I think that, the grass is always greener on the other side, but if you have a partnership, I mean, you always have somebody to be able to bounce ideas off of. Like, I just see so many benefits in that.
That's definitely a grass is always greener, because I work with partners too. So that's not, there's a saying, if you're in a canoe, if you're like in a canoe and there's like one person here and there's two people here, if they're both rowing in the same direction, they're going to beat the person alone. But if they're rowing opposite and going in circles, then alone you're doing better. So, it all depends, but it is
absolutely
like kind of where you're at, and and making the best of where you're at, for sure. And if you want to change it, kind of making that plan to change it, but definitely not just going haphazardly at it.
Yeah. I think going through my finances and making those big changes, and not even so much that they were necessarily big changes, but that I actually stuck to it was the big change, instead of flip-flopping to what every single person wanted, was just sticking to it. And, for multiple reasons, because people are hard. It's hard to tell somebody like, one day you can have an ice cream sundae, but now you can't anymore because I can't afford it.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Don't mess with the ice cream.
Right.
So which is why it's better, like the sooner as a salon owner, the sooner you can get things, the foundations laid, the less kind of, the thing about finances and money is, if you have bad money habits or overspending habits, at some point you have to stop and dig yourself out of the hole, right? And so the deeper the hole is, the quicker you stop, the better, because a lot of people want to avoid it, but that just makes it like deeper, that you have to get yourself out of. And so when you're making changes, like if anyone out there is thinking like, maybe I need to make these changes, I would urge you to do it quickly, because it's like you stop the bleeding, right? Like stop the bleeding, and then you can get healed up and then start functioning. But the longer it goes on, the more work it takes to undo it. And so,
well, it goes back to like a learned behavior. You're teaching your staff how to, that these are things that are part of their, you know, part of their job when they're actually not. And so, you know, it's the fault of the owners. It's the, you know, like, I mean, it's just, I think we have this desire as stylists to be people pleasers because we want our clients to feel good. So we want everyone to feel good. So yeah, being able to give all your staff an ice cream sundae every day makes you feel like a really amazing owner. But it's really, I think too, though, that like when you start treating your stylists or your renters correctly and start, I don't want to say like rewarding them, because they are being paid to do exactly what they're doing. And so it's a reward, but it's, you know, like they deserve to be paid. So as soon as they start having those things that are actually correct, so they don't miss having an ice cream sundae because it's not really what they're there to do. They didn't work for you because they want an ice cream sundae. They're working for you because they want this, and this out of their job.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of those extras that are actually really hurting the salon are not really what the people need anyway, right?
Exactly.
They need good leadership. I remember having that thought too, when I realized I was overpaying all my staff, and I was like, so proud of, like, I had this rockin' salon, and I was like, had good retention, and my people stayed with me. And I was like, well, of course they stay with me. I like overpay them. I give them all the schedule they want. I give them all the product lines they want. Like, of course they stay. I'm like, the next step for me, that was kind of, you know, 4 years into my business. That next step for me was, if I actually run the thing properly, will they stay with me? And how can I be that leader to get them to stay with me when they're getting paid the way they should be, when they're getting the perks that they should be getting? And, you know, we maybe stick to like 1 or 2 or 3 at the most product lines, instead of having like everything everyone wants everywhere. And so thankfully, you know, I had enough of a personal growth that I was able to achieve that. But I think you're right. Like, everyone's out there giving out ice creams to everyone.
Like a good example.
That's a good example. I like it. Making it rain.
Yeah.
Well, but it just has to be a win-win. Like, I'm not here to say like, squeeze your staff or try to get them to work really hard, but it has to be a win-win. And I just see too many salon owners losing. And that wasn't the case for you at all. Like, you came already stable, and, you know, we're still had a lot of growth, but there are a lot of salon owners out there that are losing, and that, you know, I just don't want to see that happen.
Yeah. Well, you know, the other part for me that I think I've learned from this is that when you're, as an owner, you're interviewing your stylist or your future stylist, and it goes both ways now. So the stylists are always interviewing the salon. They're like, what are you going to give me? Or what do I get from working for you? Is, you know, just a typical thing. And I mean, from a chair renter business, those things are quite different. So your kind of interview process isn't about like, what are you providing for me as a salon? It's about, what does your rental agreement look like? And what are you as a chair rental now responsible for within that space? And so, you know, those things also make a big difference in your finances as well, which I found out from making those changes. And so there's such a big difference. And I feel actually really lucky that even though I flip-flopped from like rental to like employees, and then some renters and employees, and then is that I learned those things. I mean, it was learned through mistakes, but I learned about what things belong to an employed to a renter.
Yeah.
Which is totally different.
Yeah. And it's, you know, we have a couple ways of learning. We can learn from our own mistakes, or we can learn from other people's mistakes, which are a little less painful.
Yeah.
So that's what Sarah and I are here for, all of you. You know, if you want to learn from our mistakes instead of making your own, or you've made your own and you're like, oh, I totally get that, but I just need a community to, you know, to just collaborate with, then we
Yeah.
totally do that too. What's one thing you would say, just as an, because you said your next steps is all about, you know, encouraging other salon owners, stylists. So what would be an encouraging message from you to them?
Well, I think, I'll maybe just share a little bit about what I'm planning on working on is that I do want to work more in coaching with chair renters and chair rental salons and helping them become a more successful either sole proprietorship or as an entity. And so that's kind of where my hope of my future will go, is more into coaching, which hopefully I get to work with you.
Said it live now. You said it live.
It's up there. It's out. It's a work in progress. But I think that, don't be ashamed to be wrong or to have questions. I think you have to find the people like Kaylee or like me who want to help people to become successful in whatever capacity that is within your salon. And I think having somebody who you can confide in and having an accountability person makes all the difference in the world about how you move forward. So I think just don't be ashamed, just ask the questions, just put it out there. And I think probably too, as I had a small shop, so I didn't have a lot of people in there, but I think for people who probably have bigger salons, it might also be like you had a big salon. I think it's almost more intimidating, I would think, to be able to ask for help because now you have more people to be responsible for. And if anything, I think it's probably the time to ask for help because you have more people to look after. And so making sure that you're cognizant of like how you're making those choices. I think it says a lot about you to be able to ask for help and to admit that you make mistakes and that you want to learn from them and grow for the industry, for your shop, for your staff, for your clients. Like, I mean, I think that's really admirable.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you hit it earlier too. Maybe there's some out there that are maybe a little afraid to ask or think maybe, it's like a silly question or whatever. But there's also the ones out there that are just busy, right? They're just like buried in work. And there was a Darren Hardy quote that says, "Don't be too busy mopping the floor to shut off the faucet." And it took me a while to I'm like, what? It's like, oh yeah, you're just, the sink's overflowing because the tap's on and you're there trying to clean it up. But it's just, you have to get up and actually go shut the tap off. And
stop the bleeding. Stop the bleeding.
Like that's what it's about too, is to back up far enough away from your immediate challenges to get some other perspective on it, to think, have time just to think. John Maxwell used to say he had this thinking chair, and he would just dedicate time to just thinking, which a lot of us don't spend a lot of time doing anymore. So, taking that back to be able to actually improve what you're already doing is huge too. So, yeah, so we're here. Ask us any questions. Sarah's going to be, we'll be hanging out together, figuring out next steps for you and for me, and for, how we can support all the salon owners out there. So feel free to, if you're watching this live later, shoot over some questions, comments, and we'd love to interact with you some more. So thanks, Sarah, for spending your time today to share a little bit of insight into your world. If we get some questions, maybe we'll go deeper on any of the aspects that you touched on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to.
You might want to know more about how you sold, or more about how you made that decision, or even more about how you ran your rental salon. So I think we'll just put that out there, that feel free to send us some questions. And we'll be on again sometime soon. So thanks again for coming. And thanks everyone so much, Kaylee. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.